Happy Friday, everybody. James Hancock here, and back to review Season 1 of The Witcher on Netflix. If you're debating whether or not to watch the show, I'll keep my opening remarks spoiler-free, but then I will be discussing the show in detail. Not to worry, I'll wave my arms in alarm and give you a fair warning before that happens, but I'll go ahead and say so from the outset. I loved it. Whether you're a fan of the video games like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt or the original novels, I think this show is going to make a lot of people very happy. Created by writer-producer Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich, this show leans into the dark adult fantasy ingredients that I worried that the show might shy away from. And when I say dark adult fantasy, I mean sex, gore, violence, war, torture, incest, black magic, ritualistic sacrifice, copious amounts of nudity, tons of F-bombs, and most importantly, morally ambiguous characters who are neither good nor evil, but are simply trying to survive in a grim and merciless fictional setting. And after seeing what a great job she did with Season 1, Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich is rapidly becoming one of my favorite storytellers working in television today. And I'm thrilled beyond words that Netflix has rewarded her good work by renewing the show for Season 2. If you've never played any of the games nor read any of the books, The Witcher stars Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia, a monster hunter who has no political affiliations, but who relies solely upon his strong moral code as he tries to make a living killing monsters for whoever can pay his fee. As a Witcher, Geralt has undergone these horrible alchemical trials that have turned him into a mutant with enhanced abilities that are further enhanced by the potions and elixirs he consumes before battle. With his limited knowledge of magic and his superb swordsmanship, he's basically hell on wheels. But he's also kind of terrifying, which leads to his being hated and feared by those people that he seeks to protect. Rounding out the cast, we have Ciri, a princess with a grand destiny, who goes in search of Geralt after her kingdom is destroyed by the Nilfgaardian Empire. And best of all, we have Yennefer, a sorceress of unimaginable power, one who's unafraid to use her sexuality as a weapon, and who eventually develops a really strong rapport with Geralt over the horrors that they both experienced, becoming who they are. My only word of caution to people who are totally unfamiliar with this world is how the first season does jump around with the timeline quite a bit, covering many years of storytelling. Both Geralt and Yennefer have incredibly long lives. And if you stick with it, I think the time jumps throughout their lives do pay off. But if you're not listening really closely to the dialogue, these narrative jumps might leave some casual viewers confused. Nonetheless, there's a lot to keep you entertained along the way. You have countless battles with horrific monstrosities straight out of Polish folklore. You have the ever-growing threat of the war with the Nilfgaardian Empire. And for the romantics out there, you have the sizzling on-again, off-again love affair between Geralt and Yennefer, a classic love affair between two people who desperately crave their independence, but at the same time find each other irresistible. All these ingredients stirred together should keep most viewers very satisfied. But the biggest takeaway is that Henry Cavill no longer needs to put on the tights as Superman if he's ready to move on. He appears to have been born to play this part. As an avid fantasy fan, as well as a PC gamer, he actively campaigned to audition for this role. And once he got it, he hurled himself into every little detail. He immersed himself in Andrzej Sapkowski's original stories. He took his fitness to these delirious new heights, performing all of his own stunts, resulting in some astonishingly cool fight scenes. His investment in the character is undeniable, and I hope that he and Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich will get a chance to adapt the entire series of books. I've only read up through the third book, Blood of Elves, but I was blown away by how successfully they adapted so many of Sapkowski's short stories from the first two collections. Throughout the season, you'll see details from The Last Wish, The Lesser Evil, A Question of Price, The Witcher, Sword of Destiny, Something More, and The Bounds of Reason. They're all incorporated in ways that vastly exceeded my expectations. We can debate to what degree they successfully adapted each of these individual tales, but clearly the writers on this show have a deep reverence for where this character came from. But that's as far as I can go without giving anything away, so with the broad strokes out of the way, let's dive into some specifics. If you don't want to hear spoilers, bail out now. So, where to begin? I'm a little worried that I might get carried away overpraising all the things that I like, so I think I should perhaps start by calling out a few of the flaws before showering the show with praise. As I mentioned before, structurally, the show is a little complex, and during the first few episodes, I think the show struggles to initially build some momentum, dividing its time equally between Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri. By episode 3, I was totally sold on the direction of the show, and just in awe of what I was seeing. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of viewers out there who complain about being bored initially and then bailing on the show. But if I'm being brutally honest, there were times where I found the early days of Princess Cirilla, the Lion Cub of Sintra, to be a little slow and uneventful. Her encounters with the Dryads from the short story Sword of Destiny, unfortunately, felt very rushed and thrown together. And that's easily one of the strongest short stories from the first two books. And I'm well aware of what a total badass she eventually becomes because I've played her character on the side missions in Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. But of the three central characters in this first season, I found her story to be less exciting than those of Geralt and Yennefer. And along these lines, the episodes are a little uneven depending upon who's handling the writing and directing duties. Some episodes, like 3 and 5, are such complete and total home runs that other episodes end up feeling a little soft by comparison. A perfect example is episode 6, which I really enjoyed. However, it fell short of completely doing justice to the short story that it's based on, The Bounds of Reason. The Bounds of Reason is a strong competitor for the top slot of my favorite short story about The Witcher, but they had to leave out so much of what made it great. The story deals with a variety of hunters and mercenaries coming together to hunt a dragon, with Geralt caught in the middle, trying to persuade Yennefer not to participate. In the original short story, features some killer battles between the hunters and a dragon, battles that would have been prohibitively expensive to recreate, so I get why the show left out these scenes. That said, the show still gets a gold star from me for making the effort, but my last criticism is that occasionally the special effects for the monsters look a little too digital. The show incorporates practical effects wherever it can, but for folks who in general are less than enthused about CGI, they will find a few of the monsters that Geralt fights to be a little weak in execution. But with my gripes out of the way, let's talk about what works, like the world building. From the Brotherhood of Sorcerers to the dirty taverns frequented by Geralt, I completely bought this world. The music overall struck the perfect tone for the show, especially when it's performed by Jaskier, otherwise known as Dandelion. There's this brilliant scene in episode 2 where we see Jaskier working on a tune that'll help improve Geralt's reputation overall with the locals. But then the song magically transitions into this giant orchestral score for the show overall as we see the young Yennefer sweeping her fellow students into a pool after they've been transformed into eels. It's this triumphant and horrifying moment where we realize that Yennefer will get the chance to ascend, but also that the price of failure for her fellow students is truly horrifying. Going into the show, I was most curious as to how they'd handle the character of Yennefer, but the show wildly exceeded my highest expectations. Like Henry Cavill's investment in his character, Anya Chalotra holds nothing back, and we might be seeing the birth of a new star. Born with a deformed back and jaw and beautiful purple eyes, Yennefer is sold off to her mentor for the price of less than a pig, and she genuinely struggles at first as she learns her art. Magic in this world always has a really interesting scientific component, and we see early on the price for not maintaining balance while trying to control the forces of chaos. There's a give and take that's incredibly dangerous. A fellow student's hand nearly withers away completely in an early lesson as they learn to pull life from one source, like a flower, while trying to levitate a stone. What Yennefer wants more than anything is power and beauty and control over her own destiny, and this leads to one of the best sequences all season, where Yennefer subjects herself to a magical surgery where she quite literally sacrifices and burns her reproductive organs in exchange for this brutal transformation into the stunning goddess that she becomes. But what really punctuates this horrific scene is how it's intercut beautifully with the Witcher as he's battling a Striga, a cursed creature that ate its way out of the womb of its own mother, a scenario featured in the original short story very appropriately titled The Witcher. But I couldn't believe how ferocious both scenes were as those cutting back and forth while we watched the Witcher nearly dying fighting this horrific beast, all while Yennefer thrashes around in agony, totally nude but covered in blood as her back and jaw begin their transformation. Going into the show, I worried that the writers would tap the brakes on all the adult content and shy away from all the sex and nudity that fans love so dearly from the games. In Witcher 3, there's one particularly famous scene involving a stuffed unicorn that everyone should look up on YouTube. But the original stories are definitely geared toward a mature sensibility, both with the humor as well as the sexual innuendo. But in these hypersensitive times, you never quite know what to expect. Well, episode 5, it obliterated all my concerns with some of the most erotic scenes involving magic ever put on the big or small screen. Based on the short story The Last Wish, episode 5 features Geralt looking for help healing the bard Jaskier, whose throat is clogged up after breaking a container which sealed in the power of a djinn. The local wizard turns out to be Yennefer, who's hosting this wild, over-the-top, masked orgy, giving their first encounter this undeniable sexual tension that only increases as they decide to bathe together because why not? But as we learn, Yennefer wants the power of the djinn for herself so that she can wish her womb back to full health. The magic at play threatens to exceed even her control, and we end up with this amazingly intense scene with Yennefer naked, arching her back, struggling to wield all the chaos around her. I couldn't believe how the show just went for it with so much bravado. For diehard fantasy fans who enjoy complex magic systems, the show is just a delight. Yennefer's duel with an assassin is totally badass, while the season finale probably has the best magical combat on a grand scale ever put on the screen. The Brotherhood tries to take a stand against the Nilfgaardian Empire, whose mages don't subscribe to the same set of rules. Necromancy and demonology, both of which the Brotherhood considers to be black magic, are wielded against the Brotherhood, and we see their mages quite literally disintegrating as they imbue catapults with their life force, resulting in these incredibly powerful flaming projectiles. Triss Marigold joins in on the combat, and while she might not be as powerful as Yennefer, she gives as good as she gets in the battle. And we'll definitely be seeing more of her in Season 2. But I was just blown away by the sheer variety of spells at play. In particular, as one mage decides to take on Cahir, aka the Black Knight, in single combat. There's an undeniable dark side to this show that I found really compelling. We learn a little bit about the decline of elves and how they were driven nearly to extinction by humans during the Great Cleansing. But we'll definitely be learning more as we get into the book Blood of Elves that's perfectly teed up by the season finale. But whether you're talking about dryads, elves, dragons, or any thinking creature that's not human, Geralt has so much more in common with them. He's routinely attacked by locals who hate him out of pure ignorance. And unlike most humans, Geralt has this really strong code of live and let live. And anytime he's given the choice between two evils, usually he'll choose to do neither. He has a stronger sense of honor than most knights, and yet he's perceived to be a monster. And in terms of special effects, I thought they absolutely nailed his skin and eyes when he's drinking his various potions in combat. Hopefully we'll learn more about the trials he endured to become what he is. He admits that there'll be no more Witchers due to the sacking of Kaer Morhen, a location that should be very familiar to people who've played Witcher 3. But very few people survive even the standard trials to become a Witcher. Geralt's trials were taken even further, which is why his appearance is so severe. But the show really soars when he cuts loose. His magical signs are basic, but very effective. But anytime he goes into hand-to-hand combat, his moves seamlessly flow together like a dance. Even if somebody fires a crossbow bolt at him, his senses see it in slow motion, allowing him to knock those projectiles right out of the air. It's so damn cool to watch. Also, if you want to get motivated to get in shape, hop on YouTube and check out the brutal workout routine Cavill used to get shredded for the show. It's a routine he maintained all throughout the production to try to avoid injury. But Henry Cavill gets an absolute A+ from me across the board for his complete and total investment in the character. His voice, his movements, everything was just perfect. So while we can easily nitpick the show all day for its various flaws or uneven episodes, I have to say that overall, this show is what fantasy is all about. This show is funny, sexy, violent, terrifying, just an all-around intoxicating brew, and the perfect way to bring this year of entertainment to a close. Netflix gets a massive high five from me for having so much faith in the material, and between The Irishman and now The Witcher, Netflix has made some very bold statements this year. I'm not sure, but this might be the last new show or movie I review on this channel this year, but I'll have to check and see if anything is getting released between Christmas and New Year's. But I will be going on break for the next 6 days, so sadly there'll be no new videos. In any event, there's tons of cool stuff on the horizon that I'm fired up to review, so if you enjoyed this review, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video. That's very helpful to me. If you want to talk more, you can always find me on Twitter at Colbrax. But I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.